everyone for joining us. I don't know about you, but it is rainy and cold and sad in Sydney. So I hope maybe you're like Pete and you're up in Queensland, and I imagine that it's always sunny in the Gold Coast. So hopefully you're getting a good day. We are Weel, so we are previously known for virtual cards and expense management, but here we have brought out a brand new feature, which is reimbursements. So I won't drag on for too long. I'm going to hand it over to Peter, who knows far more about this, and I will fade into the distance. But we will kick off just with a welcome to country. So I would like, sorry, my screen's just frozen. And we are back. I begin today by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we gather today and pay my respects to their elders, past and present. I extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples here today. So Peter, over to you. Be good. Hopefully, you know, you can answer all of the questions. Guys, throw all of the curly questions out. Just really throw him under the bus. Let's push him as hard as he can go. We really want to make sure that this is as valuable as it can be for you. So feel free, you know, if you've got any specific questions, put them in there. If he can't answer them, because we might have a lot of questions, then we will endeavour to get back to you. So, Peter, like I said, be good. I will fade out into the distance.
All good. And just to check, you can see my screen okay there as well, Adriana? We're good to go?
Yep, good to go.
Perfect. Well, yeah, thanks everybody. Thanks for jumping on to today's webinar. And as we can see here, the reason everybody's is joined is for our reimbursements. So the missing piece for small spenders. So Adriana's tried to steal a bit of thunder there. So just acknowledgement of country again. So in the spirit of reconciliation, Weel respectfully acknowledges the traditional owners of the country throughout Australia and their connection to land, sea and community. And we pay our respect to all First Nations people, past and present. And just a little bit of housekeeping as well before we jump in. So just keep an eye out for the interactive polls. We'd really like to get to know you guys a little bit more as well. So we'll just give you 30 seconds for each poll, just to really enter some of those details in. And then, as Adriana mentioned, so ask away with some questions, and we'll, in light of obviously the time that we've allocated, we'll answer these at the end, and there's a QA function there as well. So the session will be recorded. So if there's any of the staff, anybody across the team that couldn't make it today, we'll be able to send you the recording, and you'll be able to share this across the team. So a little bit about me. So I'm Peter. I'm one of the accounts executives, and as Adriana mentioned, I'm based in Queensland, which is usually sunny, but today it's actually a little bit of rain, which is not usual. So it says here I'm an employee expense expert as well. So hopefully I live up to that title today as I take you guys through this reimbursement tool that we offer. So just to set a bit of an agenda for the day. So number one, we'll be looking at who should be using reimbursements. 2, how do mobile reimbursements work? 3, how do reimbursements and cards work together? And 4, how to better control spending with Weel. So quick poll before we jump in and give you guys 30 seconds. If you want to just jump in and say, so how are you currently managing your employee expenses? So we've got manually, with one or more tools, or with an all-in-one tool as well. Fortunately, I can't vote on this one. Oh, good. So looks like 58% manual, 32% one or more tool, and then we've got 10% there with an all-in-one tool as well. So no surprise, we know a lot of people out there are still managing things manually. So just to give a bit of an overview of Weel, for those that might not be too familiar with what we actually offer, for those that are, you will know that those company cards, those digital corporate cards that can just sit in somebody's Apple Pay, Google Pay wallet to be used as just any standard corporate card can be used. That is the main product offering from Weel. From there, we do have that reimbursement tool. We have a bill payments tool for AP, and we have an absolutely amazing subscription management tool as well, which I absolutely love. But today we are focusing on those reimbursements, and you might wonder why all this excitement really around the reimbursement tool, because this is something that's been a product offering through Weel for a long time now. Reason being is recently, I think around about 2 weeks ago now, we actually launched reimbursements in that mobile user app. So it really means that any of your staff, whether they're on these digital corporate cards or whether they're managing reimbursements, they now get to manage everything from that easy to use interface. Moving on from there, some of those back office features as well. We offer the expense reports. We offer real-time transactions, so you can see exactly who is spending, where and when. Customizable workflows, which we'll touch on. There's budget controls and also those accounting integrations as well. So as you can see, we've really tried to create a full one-stop shop with regards to management of any staff spend from an end user perspective, all the way through to any admins or finance, those people that would then be managing these transactions later on down the line as well. So first of all, what is a small spender? So a type of employee spender within a company that is both. So making infrequent purchases that are often unplanned, and two, making purchases that are low in value. So usually no more than $50. So the reason why we say making infrequent purchases, because if you do have staff that are making frequent purchases, then they should really have access to some type of payment tool, whether that's card sharing, which we don't like, whether that's access to a corporate card or a digital corporate card with something like Weel. They really should have access to a tool if they are making frequent purchases, so they're not out of pocket their own funds. And then the reason why we say that $50, we just find that anything over that $50 mark really just adds a lot of stress to some employees. Some people might not have those funds where it might be expected that they do. And it really just adds a lot of stress for those people. So we find that anything over $50, again, they should really be having access to some type of tool. So what are the typical ways that businesses deal with small spenders? So I know in relation to the poll, we said that a thing is being managed manually at the moment. So we just have a look at some of the ways in which that's managed. So they have it where employee pays. The problem with this is, as we said here, so over 35% of people feel dissatisfied with the employees due to a poor reimbursement process. And I can attest to this. In a previous role, I was sent away on a 2-week trip, around about $2,500, I believe it was, in expenses. Not only did they not have a reimbursement process in place when it came about, it still took 6 weeks for that to be processed. So again, I was okay. I had the funds at the time, but sometimes people don't. So it really does add a layer of anxiety really to those employees. There is a card sharing as well, but that is real high risk and difficulty in reporting. So the problem with card sharing, especially for larger organizations, maybe more than 20, maybe more than 50 employees, this card gets passed around, people are taking photos. So really at the end of the month, you could have these random transactions. For one, you don't know who to follow up with for the receipt because you don't know who's made that, because there's been a lot of card sharing. And also it leaves you open to fraudulent transactions, which you'll never be able to chase down because staff that could have possibly left still have access to those details long after. There is a purchase order option as well, but this really slows down the admin team, and there's far too many people there involved in a purchase when there is a lot more smooth processes available for making purchases. And then one that I think is really important that sometimes gets overlooked is the fact that projects do really become stalled. So we know that up to 60% of employees under 24, they really put off making business payments if they don't have access to these funds. So not only does that have a knock-on effect on potentially themselves if they're needing to get a software for themselves or a flight to a meeting, but then a knock-on effect if they're maybe potentially having to purchase things for a whole team. So then ultimately that then has a huge knock-on effect on the business overall and the capabilities for it just to keep on moving along nicely. So what have we built for small spenders? So I am going to take you through this as well on the next slide, but ultimately what we've built is the ability for your end users to now come in and manage everything from in the one dashboard, as we mentioned. So now they can come in, they can upload their tax invoices, they can code it to specific budgets, and they can process that full reimbursements from an easy to use digital app. So it really is a game changer for those end users. So within the reimbursement mobile app, so it's easy to use for all levels of tech ability. We have a lot of aged care providers, non-for-profits that use it, that have a lot of, more elderly and less tech savvy volunteers sometimes, and they find it really easy to use. Submit reimbursement requests on the go, including capturing those receipts. Collect all complete expense reports in the same place. Set approval workflows to get to the right sign-off, and also the employee is paid as soon as that reimbursement is approved. So just 2 points to go back onto here that I found really important. So one is that approval flow. So not only do we have the ability to have a one-level approval for, say, a reimbursement over $50, that still would need to be approved by somebody before the person is paid back. We also allow in the system to set up a multi-level approval. These are called custom workflows. So this will really allow you just to add a bit more security over those high-level purchases before that person is actually paid back. So every business is different, but we can say here for maybe an example, $100, that would go through to the team leader and also through to the CFO or finance or admin, whoever is managing that second level approval. So really adding an extra layer of protection there. And then the last point there is the employee is paid as soon as their reimbursement is approved. Excuse me. So whether that's that one level approval or two, the good thing is that once it has been approved, the employees will be paid back usually within the hour. The first time they use the system, it will ask for their bank details and it will remember those details. And then from then on, once they process those reimbursements, they are paid back usually within the hour. So it is a game changer for those that are having to manage these reimbursements. So what I'll do is I will just jump in and share my screen. So hopefully everybody can see the user app that we have here. Let me just move this out of my way. So for those of you who are familiar with Weel and you've had a look at maybe the back office or this user app, you will know, as we mentioned, that those digital corporate cards, they are the main product. So this is our user app that sits alongside those digital cards that sit in somebody's Google Pay or Apple Pay device. And a huge point of difference from a standard card is that your users can actually jump in and they can see exactly how much they have. They can easily switch between budgets. And if need be, they can even come through and simply request for more funds as well. Within that user app, they also have the ability to use that card in store and online as well. Here as the expense tab, that's where the users then have the ability to easily upload all the receipts at point of transaction. And our system will actually follow up for this at point of transaction and also a few days later. So really saving a lot of time for the finance and admins that would usually do this job. And we know with large organizations, that can be a full-time job in itself. But today, as we mentioned, the excitement is around launching our reimbursement tool within that user app. So what I'll do is I'll take you through and show you that process for your end users. So they'll come through into the reimbursements and they'll come through and simply just upload. If they're in a coffee shop and their phone is potentially died and they've used their own funds, they'll potentially have the receipt in their hand. So when they click in, they can just simply take a photo, choose from a photo album, or choose from files. So I have my receipt preloaded on here. So I look like I know what I'm doing. So you simply just upload that tax invoice into the system. And then all that the end user has to do is simply just code it. So Canva, that's my local coffee shop. The payment was made yesterday. The expense itself was just $15. And then you'll see that the system will automatically generate that GST as well. Good thing about our reimbursements, also something I really like, it's only a small feature, but I think it's really important because it just really stops any manual adjustments being needed. Because if a purchase is made and somebody's used their own card or their own cash, for example, they come in and when they submit their reimbursement, they still code it to a budget. That means that when they are paid back, like we mentioned, usually within the hour, that means that those funds, once they're paid back, they are deducted from that said budget, here being my coffee budget. So that means from an admin or finance perspective, you're not having to manage things, you're not having to readjust to say, we've just paid somebody back from here, we need to pay them back into here because it's all coded at point of transaction, saving a lot of time. They'd also then code it to a category. This is a coffee budget. So for me, the only option available here is food and drinks. And then there is the ability to then have an extra field for a description. So in here, this could be, okay, so this was for a coffee for a client, or even if you have any project codes as well, below this, there can be an extra field where your staff are then prompted to code for any tracking categories or project codes, wherever you may call them in your system. So from an end user perspective, it's really easy for them to manage And then from a business perspective, it's really powerful because all of that information is being collected at point of transaction as soon as that purchase is made, because we all know that 2 weeks later, when we're chasing up Peter for the receipt, he's not going to know why that expense was made or where it's supposed to be coded, etc. So it really makes it really easy for the end user. And then we simply just press submit, and that will then go through. So I'll just share my other screen and take you through to the back office of Weel. Perfect. So this is the back office as well. So unfortunately, I'm not able to approve any of my own reimbursements, as none of your staff will be able to do, unfortunately. Otherwise, I'd have a better car. But from here, any of those reimbursements that do come through, they will sit in a nice table here under the expense management tab, under approvals as well. Then there is a history. So I chat with a lot of organizations that have approvals going through Gmail. They might have it going through their Slack. So there is really no trail of thought. Anybody that is an approver as well, they will receive an email notification as well. So those approvals, they don't get missed within the system. And as mentioned before, we do have that transaction table so that you have full visibility over transactions, whether that's being made from card transactions or anything in between. Let me just jump back onto slide. Perfect. So just a quick poll before we continue here. So do you feel like you've got visibility over all employee expenses? Just give you guys 30 seconds to jump in just to see what you think here. Perfect. So just looking at the results on this one. So we've got 44% yes, and then 56% say that they don't. Well, thanks for your time. We appreciate the updates on here. So reimbursements versus cards, and how do they fit together? So everyday spenders make purchases on smart cards, and then small spenders, they'll make payments and claims reimbursements. So where do these come together? So you're capturing every expense report completely. You track and manage all employee expenses in a central location. So as mentioned before, not only are the end users, your staff, not only do they know where they're going to process their reimbursements or use a card, also the finance and admin teams that are managing this later on down the line, they also then get to manage everything from that one transaction table. So you're not hopping between different softwares, jumping into Gmail to be able to manage all of these different expenses, which really saves a lot of time ultimately because it's streamlining a lot of those processes. And then easy to spot when employees should be using a card rather than out of pocket. So as mentioned, we've got that live transaction feed and you can see them coming in. So it really enables you to make smart business decisions instantly. So if you do find that there's somebody making, 2-3 reimbursements a week or high value reimbursements as well, just as important, then you are able to then just be able to switch and add them to some type of corporate card or digital corporate card as well. So how does this all help control expenses? So as we said, so it's centralizing spend. So you've got more visibility over spending. So you aren't trying to track expenses across bank statements. It also prevents overspending as well. So by managing big expenses through cards and small expenses paid out immediately, you're always on top of that cash flow, which is great. So at the end of the month, you don't have any outstanding expenses that you need to chase up with because these are being managed out of a different system. Because you've got everything in that one dashboard, it really just makes sure that you're on top of all those expenses and all of that cash flow. And then also the budget controls. So all expenses are being tracked and managed in the same way. So they're drawing from budgets all with the same policy guidelines. So as I mentioned within that, in the mobile app there, even if somebody uses their own cash or their own card, when they come through, they still code it to a specific budget. And then when they're paid back, they are paid back out of that budget. So again, it really just streamlined those processes for both the end user and for those in the finance and admin team as well. So for those of you that aren't quite ready to explore those digital corporate cards or explore Weel in general, so we've got some tips on how to get on top of your expenses today. So one would be to implement a strong expense policy. We do have an expense policy template and we can send this across. So this is something that you can definitely explore just to make sure that your staff are fitting in line with those guidelines set. And then stop using shared cards as well. So the issue that finance and admins, whoever's really managing that back office, what they really face is that, as I mentioned before, they don't know who to chase for these receipts. It really just extends that month end because they're chasing for receipts. They don't know who to chase. They might have, again, the fraudulent risk as well, because people are taking pictures and sharing those cards across the business as well. So stop using that shared card option. And then regularly review your subscriptions. I mentioned before, we do have an amazing subscription tool. The reason I like this is I had fraud in November on my personal card. I had to go through and cancel Netflix, Spotify, my gym, and go through the headache of setting it up. We know that a lot of businesses, they have up to 50, 60 subscriptions sometimes on one card. If there is an issue with card because we've been card sharing, they have to go through, cancel all subscriptions, wait a few weeks for a card, and then from there, then start them back, which potentially has a huge knock-on effect on the business. So until you do have something in place to have a bit more visibility and control over these subscriptions, we would suggest you to regularly review these subscriptions, and then you can then spot if there's any price increases, if there's any duplicates. You might have different people across the organization paying for the same thing as well. And then the last thing, it's just limit that employee pays purchases. So do regular reviews, find out how many people are making reimbursement claims, the limit as well that we mentioned before, really just to try and help with any of that employee anxiety from having to do too many purchases or high value purchases as well, and having to wait then, whether it's weekly or monthly, depending on the pay cycle, to then be paid back, to go through it all again the next month as well. So here we've got the Ask Me Anything question. We do have a few questions in the Q&A here, so I will just jump in and answer these as well while we're here. So
we have so many questions, so we're going to do our best to answer them all, but they are coming thick and fast. So good luck, Peter. I'll do my best as well in the background.
Cool. So we've got one here. So reimbursement. So can this be independent to zero? So does this expense get synced into zero? So that's correct. So all card transactions, all reimbursements, they will be synced directly into zero. So the answer is yes there. Does the OCR read receipts? So for our billing tool that we have within the system, which we didn't cover today, that's maybe next week's webinar. The billing tool does have OCR technology. At the moment, the reimbursement tool for the mobile app that doesn't have that OCR technology. You got some from your side as well, Adriana, did you say?
Yes. So this is a good one. So putting us on the spot, what's the main difference between this and zero expenses?
Oh, I can answer this one. So the earlier on when I mentioned around about that $2,500 out of pocket for myself. So when we actually had a process introduced, it was actually the zero expense policy. And for me, back then, I had no idea about GL codes or anything like that. In our system, we make it really easy for people to be able to code because we have settings in the system to be able to code to easy to understand categories. So it means that your staff don't need accounting experience, but it will marry up with your correct GL, your chart of accounts as well. So for me, back then, like I mentioned, I just didn't understand what was required from me. So I would say just the easy to use side of the Weel app for reimbursements and everything else included.
We have a question from Daryl. when can we sync the expenses to our project tool? You've mentioned that we can put in a project code, but how to import or sync to a non-finance package? Can we use a CSV, or is there an API?
So there's no API, but it is CSV. You're right in what you just said there. So in that transaction table that I showed you earlier, you are actually able to filter on here. So if you've got, we're calling project codes, everybody calls them different, so everybody gets confused here, but we're calling project codes. So if you have these in the system and then your staff are coding a point of transaction to project A, B, C, D, etc., you're able to then run reports in our transaction table as well. And then you can easily then just export that data and then import into your system really easily.
Another question from Daryl was, can this be independent to Xero? And at what point does the expense get synced with Xero?
Sorry, I misread that question. Yeah, so it was at what point? So any transactions that come through, so whether they are card transactions or reimbursement transactions, they will be synced to Xero the next day at 5 a.m. So apologies, they're all on missed the last part of that question.
Okay, so I'm just wading through. So I don't think you've covered this. So from Wendy, once the reimbursement is approved,
I've got one pop up here as well while you get that question. So there's a question here. Is there a native integration into Financial Force? So no, there is no native integration in there. I'm not too familiar with Financial Force either, but there is no integration. But as mentioned in a previous question there, so it is really easy just to export any data, run any filters on that transaction table to then easily then just import into your system for any of the data that needs to be in there also.
All right. I think because we've got so many coming through, seems like everyone has quite some specific questions. What we might do is then pop up that next poll, and so then we're able to give you a quick call back, just running through how this may be applicable. Maybe while that poll, my audio is terrible, isn't it? I'm sorry, guys.
Cool. So just a poll here. So just saying, do you want someone to reach out to talk about setting up reimbursements in your business? And as I mentioned before as well, the session will be recorded. So you guys want to share this across the team. If anybody else couldn't make it today and they want to have a look over that reimbursement tool or any of the other tools as well, you can definitely reach out to the team here. We'll be happy to take you through reimbursements and everything else that is available. Cool. So that wraps up the webinar for today around our reimbursements. We do appreciate you taking some time to jump in today. We appreciate you taking time to review the reimbursements, and we look forward to hopefully catching up with some of you, if not today, sometime over the coming weeks when you do look to just really streamline some of those processes, whether it is just for the reimbursements or whether it is as a whole solution for all of the staff spending. So I'll pass it on to Adriana. If you've got any final words just before we go, and thanks again, everybody, for your time.
Sorry, I've been alerted that my audio is terrible, so I just thank you very much. Bernie, we will do our best. Guys, let us know in the chat if you'd like to, we'll get in contact with you if you want to hear anything else. We'll get back to you. Thanks, guys.
Perfect. Thanks again, guys, and have a great day.